craftsman. My hands tell you that I work with wooden tools. We can look at them and see a history of my work. It seems there's always a scrape or a cut of some kind. I can usually tell what a man's job is from his hands. Fishermen have different hands than farmers. I'm a carpenter. It's honest, hard work. I come from the house and family of David. My name comes from the patriarch, doubly blessed, who guaranteed the success of God's work in his generation. Despite all that, it's no good maintaining any pretense. My hometown of Galilee, Nazareth, is, you might say, we're country folk. The people of Jerusalem have a great deal of fun with our country accents. We're just simple folk, kind of removed from the centers of power and influence. But we can still live honest and honorable lives. Honest and honorable. That's a laugh. So where do I get off marrying a girl who's pregnant? Yes, that's right. She was pregnant when I married her. It was an arranged marriage by our families. Seems like ever since I can remember, I always knew that the first son of Jacob would marry the first daughter of Eli. Only the way things worked out, the first son of Jacob, that's me, came along quite a few years before the first daughter of Eli. I watched her grow up. My friends were all married and had children, and she was still just a little girl. She never did seem like much more than a girl to me. Oh, I took some kidding from my friends about having gray hairs before having a wife, but I can take some teasing. We were formally betrothed. The way we do things, the betrothal is a fully legal ceremony. In it, we are pledged to each other for life, and afterwards may be called husband and wife, though we remain apart until the wedding sometime later. Betrothal is serious and binding, and can only be broken by an official divorcement. Our people like it that way. It sure is different than the countries around us where the people do not know God. It seems they don't even take marriage to be serious and binding. After the betrothal, Mary went to the hill country to visit her cousin for a few months before the wedding. I did look forward to seeing her again, but when she got back, it was all too obvious she was pregnant. She was showing. Honest and honorable. That's not the kind of man I am. I couldn't believe it of Mary either, but there it was. What could I do? I couldn't marry her. A fellow marries a pregnant girl, and what do you think? No, I had two choices. I could take her to court and prove that without my involvement, she was found to be pregnant. This would be really hard on Mary, though. She would be liable to the fullest punishment of the law, and Moses commanded that an unfaithful wife be stoned. The rabbis had provided many modifications and exceptions to this law, so I didn't think she would be stoned. But I still didn't want to take her to court. The second option was to give her a private bill of divorcement. This would avoid all the legal affairs of court. It wouldn't clear my name officially, but it would have much the same effect. Everyone would know, and it would be a lot easier on Mary and her family. This was good, so it seemed the more reasonable choice. I'm the voice of reason. I had just about had my mind made up when I had a dream. I did. God's angel told me to marry her anyways. I mean, it's bad enough that the whole town is whispering about who the father of this baby is, but then for me to appear to confirm public opinion, it didn't make sense. But God's angel told me, he called me son of David, and told me not to be afraid to take Mary as my wife. He said that the baby growing inside of her was from the Holy Spirit, and to name this son Jesus, which means God saves, because he would save his people from their sins. You might say I had a few new things to consider. As a son of David, in the legal line of his throne, whenever God might choose to renew that, I had a responsibility larger than my personal concerns. If God, by his Spirit, had put this baby into Mary's womb, I should agree if he wanted to appoint me her husband and head of that household. How can you argue with the plan of God? You can take a long piece of wood and cut it shorter, but you can't cut a short piece longer. God had given me a new piece of wood. I had to change my way of thinking. I did not cancel the wedding. I went ahead and let the villagers talk, one of the hardest things I ever did. Then we went to Bethlehem for the Roman census. The son was born there. That night, shepherds came to visit him. They said that they had been visited by angels out in the field, and they sang praises to God for the birth of our son. Imagine. The next week, we took the boy into Jerusalem, into the temple. Then it seemed like a good idea to just stay there, instead of going back to Galilee. Fewer whispering neighbors. A cousin got me work in the shop of a friend. We might have just stayed in Bethlehem, except for these magi, men from the east, who came looking for the king of the Jews. They worshipped him on the dirt floor of our little house. I don't understand it all, but somehow their dealings with Herod put us in danger. I had another dream. This time the angel said to pack up and go to Egypt. So we moved again. I didn't much like Egypt. We found a synagogue and lived in a Jewish neighborhood, but I really started to miss Galilee. Finally, Herod died, and we planned on going back to Jerusalem. But Archelaus was the next Roman puppet king, and I wanted to be out of his way. So we took the boy back to Galilee instead. Maybe by now the neighbors would be tired of whispering. We made our lives in Nazareth. I held his hands and taught them to do carpenter's work. After all, David had been a simple shepherd. This boy could begin as a carpenter. But what then? The other children came along, some with good, strong hands, able to get all the piece of wood had to offer. But not him. His hands were not made for carpenter's work. His hands were made for different business. Business that angels sang about. Business that brought magi from the east to worship him. Business that scares the tin-crowned kings of this world. I wasn't there. I didn't get to see how it turned out. But I can usually tell what a man's work is by his hands. Show me his hands, and I'll tell you his work.